happen. And those people are in this room here. Our faculty members, our community partners, and our students have said, yes, this is something that's important and that's a part of our DNA, and folks have continued to do this work. So I just can't say enough congratulations and thank you for when things could, I think as Barbara Holland mentioned on Tuesday, could get put in the too hard pile. We said instead, let's think about how we can do this differently, and dug in as a community of folks. And that's a special and unique thing. So as we close out our showcase with this session today, I just hope that that energy and the power, the collective power of the dedication of everybody coming together to make our engagement work during these times kind of lifts you as we go into a new academic year, into the summer. So as well as we celebrate and get to see all of the things that are happening. So I'm here to welcome you all. I also want to start off by, I believe, giving kind of a quick overview of what we are going to be doing today. No, I'm going to do the land acknowledgement first, and then I'm going to do the overview. So we always start in the Service Learning Academy by acknowledging the native lands in which we are coming from. This statement has been developed with our partners from Campus Compact, which is a national civic engagement and community engagement service learning organization, as well as with UNO Native American Studies. So we want to pause for a couple of minutes and acknowledge the native lands on which we are coming from. I encourage you, if you have a statement yourself, or if you're interested in learning more, I'm sure a teammate will drop the link in the chat here. We deliver a land acknowledgement to acknowledge the historical legacy of colonialism by honoring and paying respect to the land, which was taken by conquest, along with the domination of people who inhabited the land and the imposition of white supremacy. We do it to raise greater public consciousness of Native sovereignty and cultural rights as a small step toward equitable relationship and reconciliation. As such, we first recognize that we are guests living on lands represented by Native nations whose sovereignty, governance, and treaty lands existed long before the state of Nebraska. These nations include the Omaha, Ponca, Santee, Ho-Chunk or Winnebago, Lakota, Pawnee, Cheyenne, Arapaho, Meskwaki, Oto, Missouri, Iowa, Kaw, Wichita, Kickapoo, and Delaware nations. Thank you for taking that time with us today. Our agenda are to kind of go over a little bit about this new model of service learning that we have, that the Maverick Philanthropy Initiative. And we have some really exciting folks that are going to be here. But you're going to hear from students, you're going to hear from community partners, and you're going to hear from our faculty members that have kind of jumped into this new initiative and have lessons that they've learned, things that they've impacts that they've seen, best practices that we've kind of started to peel off and learn from. Also, we want you to understand how you might be able to get involved in this and learn from other folks and connect your organization, your class in any way that you can. I know that the Service Learning Academy team is here for that as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Mazen, who will take us through the next portion. Thanks again for being here, everyone.
Sure. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mazen. I'm a graduate assistant here at Service Learning Academy. First, I'm going to share about service learning here at UNO. Service learning at UNO is an opportunity for hands-on learning, where the course content is directly linked to the real-world experiences. It links academic study to both practical experience and community involvement. Service learning courses prepare students to bring their skills learned in the classroom to their future careers. Service learning projects are created in collaboration with community partners that are often non-profit within the local community. They have the opportunity to identify their opportunities for student contribution. Last, service learning is rooted in reflection. When we say reflection, we ask students why over and over again to engage and promote their critical thinking. So let's move to the second slide. All right, can you move to this? Okay, here we go. There are three models of service learning here at Yono. The first one is the traditional model. The traditional service learning courses includes Yono course that's partnered with the community partner to meet the students' learning goals while completing a community identified project. The second model, which is the P16 model, P16 surface learning courses include Yono course, community partner, and preschool 12th grade. P16 service learning courses meet both P12 and Yono course learning goals while completing community identified projects. The third one and the newest one, which is the Maverick Philanthropy Initiative. The Maverick Philanthropy Initiative courses are service learning courses that are also designed to encourage an interest in philanthropy while educating students on the real life impact of giving. And Kristen will share more about the Maverick Philanthropy Initiative. Kristen, the mic is with you.
Thank you. So the Maverick Philanthropy Initiative connects service learning to charitable giving, and it provides students with a structured opportunity to share their time, talent, and treasure with the local community. So each class is given a $1,000 grant that they can distribute into the community following their course service learning project. And through this model, students become the philanthropist, and in all of its forms. And they use what they've learned about the community through their service learning project to help inform their decision about how to invest the $1,000 grant. This initiative was launched in 2019, and it was piloted within this public speaking fundamentals class as a way to make the course content more meaningful and relevant. And students were able to apply that classroom content to community identified needs by helping to tell the stories about community organizations and why the community should become engaged as volunteers or donors. And they were able to learn about the impact of giving, but also more importantly about the community issues and opportunities for them to be engaged as well. So when we think about, if we could go to the next slide, these are just a few of the benefits of the Maverick Philanthropy Initiative for faculty, students, and community partners. And so what we know is that this type of work is going to break down the classroom walls, in this case, the Zoom walls. It allows students to have greater interaction with the community to better understand what is going on and how they can personally become involved in that work. And for community organizations, it's going to allow them to expand their network and advocates for their mission and the work that they do. And hopefully one of those end goals as well is to expand their capacity to do their great work. So there's been a significant impact to date, and we're really excited about that. And if we could go to the next slide, it would just kind of show you an overview of where we're at today. We've been able to grant over $24,000 into the community. We've had over 500 students that have participated in 22 different classes at UNO, and 21 different organizations have received funding through this initiative. And so I think that that's a really amazing start to this really great program, and we're excited to see where it goes from there. Grace is going to walk us through a little bit about how does this program actually work in application and how to get involved.
Hi, everyone. I'm Grace Nelson. I'm a graduate assistant, as Kirsten said. And I really enjoy working with this project because it's so nuanced. You know, any project any course you connect to, things can shift and we meet you where you're at. So first, how does Maverick Philanthropy Initiative work? It's tied to a course. So that can be either undergraduate level or a graduate level course on campus. But in addition to that, it must be linked to a service learning project. Now, I don't want that to sound intimidating because it doesn't have to be an existing project. that's been around for years. This can be a new project. So really you can come to us with ideas and we'll step into that space, but no matter what, service learning is at the foundation of what the Maverick Philanthropy Initiative is. But what we do with the Maverick Philanthropy Initiative is we incorporate philanthropy into the course as well. So it's always going to be both service learning and philanthropy. And so what does that look like? Is we want to make sure that as you're engaging in a service learning project, we want to add in some additional content where we talk about what are the principles of philanthropy. We want to make sure students have an opportunity to understand the impact of philanthropy on themselves as individuals, but also in their community and how that goes beyond the classroom and what that can look like for them in their future as well, how philanthropy might show up for them. So the other piece we'll do is we'll work with you in adding this into your course, but we'll talk a lot about process, is how do we honor student voice and provide space for students to be philanthropic leaders where they get to grapple with some of these questions of say, hey, we have multiple community partners or different programs that we're working with, but how do we allocate a $1,000 grant to one of them? How do we make that decision? What goes into this? What criteria do we look at? So it's really giving them an opportunity to exercise that critical thinking and feel actively engaged in the process of what it means to be a philanthropic leader. So then the other thing is, while I'm talking about a lot of these different concepts, that might sound intimidating. It sounds like a lot, but the best part is you have a lot of support along the way. SLA provides you with project support. And right from the get-go, if you connect with us in an initial meeting, like a planning meeting to figure out I have this idea, what can it look like? You'll have a graduate assistant assigned to your project right away. So we can just start brainstorming together and support you along the way as we develop this project that has philanthropy involved in it. And lastly, so sorry, Madeline, I kind of left you a little gap there, which is tricky for slide transition, but I would say that there's plenty of different community partner opportunities and they all vary. So one thing I'll say is, while we might have projects that focus on a particular issue area, that might be poverty or food insecurity, that might be more limited to community partners who really address those issues within our community for that participation. But there's other projects like our speech classes that we connect with, where any issue area that a community partner addresses is welcome within that space. And so there's opportunities for students to advocate. So there's always a way to plug in, and we'll send out opportunities at the beginning of a semester for you to decide whether or not you want to opt into that opportunity. And then lastly, we'll kind of plug in opportunities in the chat, and we'll send you an email afterwards to opt into this, but you'll be able to submit an interest form. And this is by no means something that has to be a well-crafted, perfectly detailed idea. We just want to know like the nuts and bolts. What are you thinking? And for faculty, you'll submit this interest form and you might say what course you're teaching, when you're teaching it, what initial ideas you have. And then for community partners, are you interested in engaging with the MPI courses, and what potential ideas do you have? What context are you thinking? So yeah, we'll be putting that in the chat and we'll send it out in an email with handouts, but we'd love to hear from you. And once you submit an interest form, we'll reach out to you, so you don't have to worry about that follow-up. Yeah, and I think I'm passing it back to Kirsten or Mazen. I'm sorry, I think it's one of you two.
Thank you, Grace. So we're going to play a video in seconds. This is give you an opportunity to hear from our stakeholders sharing about their experience with the Maverick Philanthropy projects. So Madeline, could you play the video?
The technology is just a little slow today, but we're getting there.
I liked talking about City Sprouts, and I liked that it changed my mind about how I see philanthropy, because I don't think of money anymore. When I think of philanthropy, I think of the first part of the definition, which is focusing on welfare and well-being of people, communities, stuff like that. And that was something that I wouldn't have got, if I hadn't taken this class and if I hadn't worked for City Sprouts. My views wouldn't have changed.
This kind of ties into like my favorite part of the project was that we had a celebration at the end of the project. And even though it probably wasn't what it was normally like, we had to do it on Zoom, but it was really great to hear from the different community members and just their gratitude for the opportunity that they were given. And it made me feel really good about just being able to be a part of that. And they were great people, and they were really excited about it.
I perceive one of the biggest values that it's brought to teaching public speaking. The Maverick Philanthropy actually allows students to put what we're teaching in the classroom into action. So they get to see it for real life.
And when the pandemic hit, it was just like I was just cut off from all that, and we can't really volunteer anymore. So I felt really distant from the community, and that I had been out for so long, and I still haven't really been back in yet. But this kind of brought me back into the community and like gave me that sense that I had been missing for a really long time, and just that face to face, or like the screen to screen, and being able to do something that fulfilled me.
But this is one of those projects that allows us to show as I refer to, the why for, or why are we learning about communication, and why is communication important? One of the things that I've seen for my students is when it is something that's real to them, such as a organization that they truly believe in, their speeches go to a new level, and they really believe in what they're talking about. So it allows them to see what the empowerment of their voice can do for them, not only for them, but what it's doing for others in the community.
You were giving your students more than just the typical classroom experience. You were having them interact with the community they live in, hopefully drawing deeper connections to that community so that we don't experience the brain drain. They graduate well-educated from UNO with a good degree. We want them to stay here and benefit this community. And
like a class in college sophomore year can change your whole view of a whole system and issue that I didn't give much thought to it before. And as far as how it changed what I thought about the community, I think that we have a long way to go, because I had no idea about all these organizations, and I should have.
Is one of my teaching philosophies that I want my courses not to be transactional, meaning that it's just a credit filler. I want my courses to be transformational, and having the Maverick Philanthropy Initiative allows the course to be transformational, meaning that they will carry it forth with them and understand that what they've learned, they can apply to many other things in their life.
if there's any one thing that I would say to my counterpart in another charity that would be considering participating in the program, is that this program is giving them an opportunity to teach college students, or to have college students learn about what they do and how they're benefiting the community. And that may resonate with one or two or three of the students personally, and they may get another member, they may get another volunteer. And at the very least, they're going to get some people who are going to advocate for them to get some donor dollars.
Communities are important. We're all involved. We're all a piece of a bigger thing.
But I think it's just a great opportunity. I think everybody should give it a try once. And, a lot of these classes are classes we have to take. They're credits that we need for our major. And I don't see why not to do them so you can do something that fulfills you and that makes you feel part of the community.
Only a big thank you, both again, to the students who advocated for us and resulted in us receiving some donor dollars. And just a thank you to the university for having that foresight of this sort of practical experience in the classroom and getting students connected with philanthropy and charitable works.
So we're really lucky to have two of our stakeholders with us today, Mia and Amaya. Thank you so much for being a part of this video project, and also Amy and Dan, who were also able to share their story. I just wanted to pause and see if either of you had any additional reflections or thoughts that you might want to share. I'm kind of putting you on the spot because you did the video, but anything that comes to mind as you're kind of thinking about the opportunity that you had to participate in this particular initiative?
I can go ahead. I just, what was I gonna say? I hadn't really known what I was getting into when I first started the course. But we got to it and we went through it, and I just feel so grateful to have had that opportunity, because for me, being a part of the community was such a big thing in my life. And I said that in the video. I was kind of like cut off from that when everything hit, and it was like I'd been missing the community. So to be able to find a way to connect to them even in a pandemic was amazing, and to research about my own speech that I gave, but also hear other people's speeches and the community organizations they were working for, and just like even the preparation for the speech, like looking through that huge list of organizations, and there's just so much to learn and so much to do to be a part of it. So I enjoyed the entire experience. It was amazing.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Maya. I just want to say thank you to Ms. Riesberg for helping me out the whole time. It was really funny to go from, because my first speech, I think, was about like cleaning my lizard's cage. So from going to that to then talking about this whole city sprouts and this whole big, huge thing and community building and community engagement, it was just like kind of surreal. Like, how did I go from talking about my lizards to this? And then that my speech was so impactful that now I'm sitting here talking to all of you. It's just so crazy how that works. But my top 5, like my very first Clifton strength is connectedness. So this speech was super cool because I've worked for City Sprouts for the past 2 years, and I'm working for them again this year. So it's just so crazy how things really do come full circle. But I just want to say thank you to Grace and Miss Riesberg.
Those are really great insights that you both shared with this idea of connectedness to the community, and how this last year has really impacted all of us and our ability to do that, to stay connected and to feel a part of the community. And then to, you know, what I heard you talk about was this kind of a different application of this assignment, right? So the first one, you're just talking about this kind of this random thing in your life, but then you got to talk about something that was really meaningful for you, but also for the community at large. And I think that really speaks to like the heart of why this initiative exists. You know, in addition to all of the many, many benefits that there are for faculty and students in the community, like it is about connecting to each other and being able to support each other. And we're just really thankful that this was in place and that this was an opportunity during a really difficult year for everybody to be able to provide that type of experience. And I'm really glad that you're here, because I'm hoping if you have time to stick around, we're going to transition into our panel now, and there might be questions for you along the way as well. So I just want to encourage all of the attendees, if you do have questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat. I have not been paying attention. I will look at them, I promise. My coworkers will hold me accountable to that as well if there's something I need to know about. But we're going to transition now into our panel discussion. And I'm really excited to just dive a little bit deeper into the initiative and the impact and like what this looks like. And so this is really an opportunity for us to hear from faculty and their own experience with this initiative and what they've learned along the way, and also from the Omaha Community Foundation to get that bird's eye view of philanthropy in Omaha and how a program like MPI fits into that larger picture for our communities. So I want to start with introducing our panelists. So Emily Pronner is the Donor Services Specialist with the Omaha Community Foundation, and Dr. Kelly Gomez Johnson is Assistant Professor with the College of Education, Health and Human Services, and Casey Reesberg is instructor with the College of Communication, Fine Arts and Media. And I may not explain this very well, but if you want to pin our panelists, you can do that by going up to their box, and there's in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little box with 3 dots. And when you click on that, it gives you an option to pin those folks, or you could watch all of us Brady Bunch style. That's cool too, but that's an option if you want to do that. And then also please feel free to drop questions into the chat as well. Apologies, I have a dog that's snoring next to me, so welcome to COVID Zoom. So I just want to start this discussion with you, Emily, and I was wondering if you could give us a little bit of background about philanthropy in Omaha. Like, what does that landscape look like, and what has that traditionally looked like when we think about donors in our community? And then what trends are you seeing as we look into the future?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thank you all so much for including me in your conversation. I was incredibly inspired by Maya and Amaya. I hope I'm pronouncing your names right, but just the students that were on the video. And also, Kirsten, it's been 14 months of Zoom, and I did not know that pin trick. So always learning something new. But yes, hello, I'm Emily Pronner. I'm with the Omaha Community Foundation. First, we'll talk a little bit about trends, and then later can share a little bit more about how your students can get involved in strategic philanthropy. But starting with trends and who OCF is and what we do, our whole role in the community is to strengthen and support the work of nonprofit organizations. We inspire giving to solve our community's most pressing needs. Our most concentrated focus is Greater Omaha and Southwest Iowa. It's pretty incredible to know that 1.7 million nonprofits are registered with the IRS across the country, and 13,000 are here in the state of Nebraska. Many types of different, many types of nonprofit organizations. By far the most common, most recognizable are those 501c3 public charities, the ones that you and your students have interacted with probably almost on a daily or weekly basis, whether it's learning how to swim at the Y, or walking for a cure, or adopting a furry friend, smelling the flowers at the botanical garden. So lots and lots of ways that we've all engaged with nonprofits, and they really do permeate our everyday life. Looking at how nonprofit budgets are structured, we can see how important philanthropy is to the success of those organizations. Most typically, as most of you probably already know, but most typically a nonprofit revenue comes from program fees for service, government contracts, but then of course also philanthropy. And it varies in terms of size and type of organization, but on average, 15-20% of an organization's budget comes from philanthropy. That's a really important, and that just showcases how important philanthropy is. Giving comes in a lot of different ways, of course, as Maya said, which I really appreciate that insight. But that comes from individuals, it comes from corporations, it comes from the proceeds from an estate, and of course, corporate support as well. But what's interesting is most nonprofits are really small. 90% of all nonprofits operate on $500,000 or less. 50% of nonprofits have less than 1 month of cash reserves on hand. Very, very, very few, if any, many few have endowments. So all that to say, the average nonprofit is community-based. It's serving local needs. It's serving our neighbors. We're engaged, we're all engaged with a nonprofit in some way. But as demand for services increase, as government budgets shrink, philanthropy is needed now more than ever. We're seeing that, public charities are, in the era of COVID, we're seeing how important the role of community support is through organizations, and therefore continues to increase the need for philanthropy. So there's many reasons people get involved and interact with nonprofit organizations. Of course, we know philanthropy is not just financial capital, but it's also volunteerism and providing social capital and connections. Maya, I really appreciate, it's not just a financial commitment, it's community engagement. And that's what we believe here at the Omaha Community Foundation as well. We know that giving is extremely personal. And our mission is to create a thriving community for every person. We do that by cultivating generosity and strengthening nonprofits, and more than anything, engaging community around priority issues, which I can share a little bit more in depth a little later with another question. But I wanted to share just briefly some trends that we're seeing with ages and generations, and especially as that pertains to you all as faculty, engaging young people. Philanthropy is not one size fits all. Different approaches are really needed for different generations. It's hard to believe, but there are 6 generations to consider when thinking about the philanthropic landscape. We have our greatest generation in boomers and Gen X, but then of course, millennials, Gen Z, and now Alpha generation under 10. So it's pretty wild to think that there's just so many different generations coming together, and they all have different priorities and they all have different giving habits. And it's important to be mindful of that when you're creating a strategy and create engaging young people and folks across the spectrum. So for the sake of the Maverick Philanthropy Initiative, for the sake of you all, I'll focus on millennials, which is mid-late 20s to 40s, but also Gen Z, which is teens to mid-20s. We know that you don't just have the traditional college age students, you might have some non-traditional students. So I didn't want to forget those folks. So millennials are not the top donor group, but we know that millennials have increased their giving consistently since 2013, whereas in that same time period, boomers in the greatest generation have decreased their giving. So, even millennials are averaging more volunteer hours than their previous generations. We know that they are very willing to engage in philanthropy, even if they can't keep up with the other generations in terms of financial commitments. We know that that's a lot to do with their life stage. They have higher student debt. I'm a millennial. I'm trying to establish my career and my family priorities. I'm earning less than previous generations in a lot of cases, but that doesn't mean that millennials aren't active in growing contributors in this philanthropic space. So millennials are also the largest generation in the workforce. So it's more important than ever to understand their giving habits. Peer influence is a huge factor, and that's why Maverick Philanthropy Initiative is incredible, because according to the Millennial Impact Report, almost 50% of all millennials are more likely to donate, and 65% are more likely to volunteer if their friend or coworker is involved in a cause. So perfect case in point, if there's collective giving happening, you learn by example in a lot of cases. There's not a lot of data on Gen Z or Alpha yet, but we know their work, we know that they want their work to make a difference. We know that they want to be engaged in their community. We also know, this is very interesting and mind-blowing, we know that the Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, beyond are estimated to inherit almost $60 trillion by the year 2060. So if you think about that for a second, that is an incredible amount of wealth transfer. And it's speculated that half of those inheriting that wealth will allocate to charitable causes. So it's incredibly important to teach our young people how to be effective and strategic stewards now, so that as they're inheriting this wealth, they can be as impactful and strategic as possible when that time comes. And so, of course, technology makes philanthropy more accessible. Younger generations are wanting to do more than just write a check. One last trend, and then I'll pass it back. I don't want to hog the time, but one very interesting kind of trend that we are seeing is, according to the 2021 Omaha Council Bluffs Civic Health Indicators, which is collected from the American Community Survey, half of the respondents between ages 18 and 29 said they gave at least $25 to charitable causes in the last 12 months. Almost 70% of individuals who only earned a high school diploma, no other educational attainment, 70% of just those who have earned a high school diploma gave at least $25 in the last year. Individuals making less than $35,000 a year are saying they gave, 55% of those individuals are saying they gave $25 a year. So these numbers are showing that people can be generous at any age, at a young age, without an advanced degree, and even at a modest income. So there's this energy now to really engage young people in giving, and it's so important. I have more to share, but we can certainly come back to me.
Thank you so much, Emily. It's very interesting, and I think that it speaks to the changing environment that we're in. Not only are our needs continuing to evolve within our communities and the demands for services, how families are being impacted by a variety of things, including the pandemic, but also how people are showing up to meet that need. So thank you. That helps kind of lay this nice foundation for us as we're thinking about what does that mean then on our campus as we're thinking about our students and we're thinking about how we're engaging them in this type of work and understanding about philanthropy through this initiative and through classroom service learning projects. And so Dr. Gomez-Johnson, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the class that you taught this semester and what was the project that you did, and why did you choose to do this with your students?
Thank you so much for having me. And Emily, that was amazing information. The nerdy learner in me was just taking it all in. But so I teach in the College of Education and teacher education, and my students are aspiring secondary teachers. So they're teaching 6th through 12th grade in all content areas. And some of the learning outcomes that we have for our class, we teach a lot about culturally responsive teaching and the learning needs of diverse learners. So English language learners, students that come from difficult backgrounds, high ability learners, students with special needs. We try to cover this idea that from the get-go, they understand that not everyone thinks, learns, and acts like you do. And with so many of our teachers, aspiring teachers, predominantly white females, you look at the teaching population, that is kind of what our demographic looks like, and it is changing, and we're excited about that. But then we enter many schools in the Omaha area, especially we partner with Omaha Public Schools, and my class always partners with Central Omaha, which has a high demographic of refugee, immigrant, and migrant populations, families and communities that they serve. And so our class always has a culture walk, which is a great experience. And we hear from community members, we hear from students and teachers, and it's great. And then after that, we go back to learning in the classroom. And then 5 of their 16 weeks in the semester, they're out in a school building working with students. And so this community engagement aspect of it is kind of always a part of our class because we have an embedded practicum in our course. They're graded on their professionalism. They're graded on their ability to connect with kids. They're graded on their ability to interact with teachers and communities. But it's hard, like you have to teach the heart, right? You have to somehow get their heart to really care deeply about students and their families and their communities and their circumstances. And so when I saw the opportunity for the service learning, and I'd been looking at service learning for a while, but I thought, 5 of our weeks are already in a practicum, and you think about all the content and all the everything. And but when I saw this opportunity, I kept thinking to myself, there's got to be a way that my students can embed our work more into the community organizations that we hear about on one day, but extend that further. And so by a lot of support by this MPI team, thank you, Grace, thank you, Kirsten, with a lot of support, we were able to embed a project that engaged my students in looking deeper at the different community organizations that support refugee, migrant, and immigrant populations here in the Omaha area, specifically Central Omaha. And so we had some great people that we worked with the Refugee Empowerment Center who connected us to other organizations. I think my students really learned a lot about the web of connectivity with community organizations, how they help each other. They're not against each other. They really are helping each other to best serve the community and the needs of people. And so they started to see that everybody knew each other and that we could do this project, which is work kind of talking about beekeeping and their own community gardens. And we can talk with this group and about the bio project and Black identities. And so it was just an amazing experience for my students to then teach their peers. And I try to tell them so often that it's not about the content, it's about how you inspire and motivate learners. And so by them sharing these community projects, they were able to apply lesson planning and not presenting, but teaching their peers about the different opportunities and amazing things that are out in the community to support our families. So that was just a little bit about our project.
Thank you. And it was really beautiful to watch that process unfold and to see too how sometimes these themes or topics seem very separate from us and very disconnected from us, but really it was very personal as well for many of your students. And so that reminder that, Emily kind of spoke to this, these community organizations and opportunities are us. They're in our neighborhoods. They affect our families, our friends. And we never know, some of it's enrichment, right? So I want to be able to participate in these creative programs, or I want to stay fit and healthy, or I'm dealing with food insecurity or homelessness. And so that was a really kind of gut-wrenching, but also heartwarming experience to watch your students through that. And so Casey, I would love to hear about your experience. So you've been doing this and you've been engaged with Maverick Philanthropy for several semesters now. And one, I'm curious about why do you continue to incorporate this into your course, but also we've seen a lot of evolution in how it shows up in your class and how you're engaging students in that process. And so what has that experience been like for you? And, what does it look like for today, as we're looking at Maverick Philanthropy within your course?
Thank you so much for asking me that. I'm excited to kind of share what my experience has been. So as Kirsten mentioned, I've been working with the MPI project, for a couple of years now, actually. So I've been doing this project for, I think, maybe 4-5 semesters. So it's been really amazing, and it has definitely evolved from the beginning. But I use this in my public speaking courses, and like I said, have for a while now. And as this project started out with my public speaking courses, it started out with students just giving a persuasive presentation over a selected nonprofit, which and then through that presentation, their classmates would vote on which nonprofit would receive a $1,000 donation, which is amazing. It was something that my students were very excited about from the beginning, which is part of what propels the project. Amaya and Maya are both wonderful students of mine from last semester, and I think that they are a wonderful testament to why I continue doing this project, because it's for the students and it's for the community. Watching my students grow from this project from the very beginning, and then watching them become more engaged in the community has made this project so much more than just an assignment for my students. Amaya mentioned already that, she was kind of thrown into the project, not knowing what to expect at the beginning, but then you watch each other's presentations, you get to know each other. And that was an interesting semester too, because obviously as I've progressed from just a Persuasive One presentation, which was in person, it's now gone from in person to hybrid to asynchronous, which is actually how Maya and Amaya experienced it. And then this semester I'm doing synchronous online. So much perspective on different methods of still maintaining the same project. And I'm happy to say that through, Maya's and Amaya's experiences last semester and through their classmates' experiences, the thing that I kept hearing is that the students wanted more ability to work with their nonprofits, more time to work on assignments, more engagement in the community, and more connection towards the service learning project that we were doing in the class. So this semester with my synchronous class, I'm actually having them do an informative presentation over their nonprofits as well. So they spend more of the semester researching and engaging with their community partners, which Service Learning Academy does an amazing job of connecting us to. Grace is one of our wonderful assistance in the project, and she does an amazing job of connecting my students to their choice of community partners, and we kind of get them engaged longer and more into the semester this way, because we're able to allow them to do more research on who they might want to support in the community, and to actually get their feet wet and interview someone from the nonprofit. And then in wonderful cases like Maya's example, where she was, able to give a presentation over a nonprofit that she was not only familiar with, but to continue that engagement. I think that's why we continue to do what we're doing now. And this semester, like I said, has been a real highlight to me, because I'm able to have taken 2 assignments instead of 1 that are connected to the MPI. And I had a student literally give a presentation today that said, I knew nothing about community engagement before. I knew nothing about this nonprofit before. And now I understand why there's a need to support this nonprofit. And I'm glad that I was, given the opportunity to focus my time on that. So that's where I'm at. That's why we continue to work with MPI in my public speaking course. And I'm thrilled and excited to continue working with Service Learning Academy and MPI moving forward in future semesters.
Thank you. One of the unique things about MPI, is certainly the grant making process. And so depending on the course, because they all look really different, students might have a number of organizations to choose from that they want to engage with and focus their service learning project on. And also for some projects, it may be one organization that they're working with, but they're looking at a variety of programs, and then they're determining based off of that service learning project and what they're learning about the organization, where they would want to invest those dollars based off of the programs that are there. And Emily, I wanted to circle back to you. You had mentioned strategic philanthropy, and I want to know more about that, but I'm also wondering if that speaks a little bit to possibly, or maybe it's a side question around giving is personal. And so, thinking about philanthropy from a time, talent, treasures perspective, how we help people figure out, their giving and how they want to invest their time, talent, and treasure. And so, do you mind speaking to that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, as I mentioned earlier, we are seeing that, younger generations are giving. They're giving at a variety of ways, not just financial, but also, volunteer support, personal, social capital, connections, et cetera. But we know that they're not only giving, but they'll continue to give, most likely will continue to give at a high rate. We know that these generations are inheriting all this wealth. And so as we talked about strategic philanthropy, and setting kind of that foundation and stage now, I can't speak highly enough of this initiative because it is the perfect opportunity to introduce students who may not have, as Casey said, may not have ever had this interaction before. And so get their feet wet with service learning principles. And so when it comes to grant making and philanthropic decision making, especially strategic philanthropic decision making, a couple of things that we really consider with our own OCF's discretionary grant making, but then also having conversations with donors that we interact with in the community. And I can impart some of that maybe you can use and take back with your students. But we think about how to prioritize equity in grant making, how to reduce hoops, how to reduce barriers to entry in terms of a grant. You know, an unrestricted gift is the most flexible, the most desired, and the most important gift that a nonprofit can receive. And then truly understanding the community needs and the gaps of support, the gaps in what organizations have based on systemic barriers. I think that's really important to understand. And so what I can do is I can share some of the tools that we've curated, use some of the educational resources that we have as a starting point for your students as they begin to research the thousands of opportunities available to them, how to narrow that down a little bit. And so, you know, from our own grant making programs and data evaluation project and listening, we have a pretty deep understanding of what the strengths and assets of our community, as well as the challenges that residents face and the opportunities for growth and improvement. So one place to start is the omahafoundation.org site/community, omahafoundation.org/community. You'll see a tool called the landscape. That's a good starting point for students who are truly like trying to figure out, okay, what issue areas do we even care? Like what are out there and what could I potentially kind of laser in on? And we have about 8 different categories or priority areas. You know, health, neighborhoods, safety, transportation, workforce, education, civic engagement, as well as arts and culture. So it's a good place to start to begin digging into what the community needs based on data and based on listening. Our team has kind of curated some conversations with folks saying, hey, you know, I want to see more transportation infrastructure that supports me. I want to see more involvement from my neighbors. So that's a good place to start in terms of in community indicators. But another way that we are strategic with our own grant making and community loan investments is we like to base our grant making on needs. And we share our knowledge with the community at large, with our fund holders. And internally, we've prioritized racial equity in our own grant making. So what that means is we've looked at organizations that are BIPOC led or BIPOC serving, Black, Indigenous, people of color led or serving. And especially in 2020, that's how we allocated our Fund for Omaha dollars. So those are also some good places to start. Is if you go to omahafoundation.org/nonprofits, you'll see a couple of different of our grant making pools that we've had conversations with these nonprofits in terms of what are those organizations doing to address some of those gaps in community. So our Fund for Omaha, as well as our community interest grants. So those are just some places to start. We of course know we can't do it all. We have to partner. We have to partner across private, government, nonprofit sector to meet our community needs. So this past year, we also partnered with Douglas County to administer some CARES dollars and food stimulus dollars. So those are also, if you look at our community link, you'll see where organizations we supported through our COVID response fund. We're pivoting that to a resiliency fund because we know that health, economic, we know that continued needs, you know, lingering social impacts will be there for years to come. And so we know that we can't just have focused on it in 2020, and we know COVID will be around, the impacts will be around for a long time. So those are some places to start. But then some, like I said, some questions to ask, some questions for your students to ask is, how can we reduce barriers with our grant making? How can we make our grant as equitable as possible? And, we know, we've read the news, we know millionaires and billionaires are, making massive gifts, they're being generous, but that's not the only way to make a difference. We all know that. We know that collective giving, like what the MPI program is doing, we know it's an amazing opportunity to create this broad impact, because it's pooling resources based on this collective vision of what your students want to see for a better Omaha. So we're just incredibly proud to partner with UNO, because we are able to see the difference made through the eyes of our young people and the next leaders in our community. Hopefully that answered some of your question.
Yeah, I really appreciate the resources, but also thinking like philosophically, right, about how we approach this work, and knowing as faculty that there's this opportunity to prioritize areas, if that makes sense. So, Dr. Kelly Johnson or Gomez Johnson, for your class, it made sense, right, to prioritize refugees and the organizations serving refugees in our community, because that's a population that our students, our teachers are really interacting with a great deal. And so how do we better understand that part of our community? We have a class that is prioritizing poverty, focused organizations through their coursework and their service learning project. And then, through our public speaking fundamental courses, there's been this opportunity to really think broadly and for students to connect to organizations that are meaningful to them. And so these are all, there's no right or one size fits all. And so I think that that's like that important piece. So we're really lucky to have faculty and partners and students here today. So for our partners, we want you to know and to hear that you have a place in the Maverick Philanthropy Initiative. You have a place in being engaged in these projects and initiatives with us. Because there is such a variety of courses being taught and those opportunities. And for faculty too, that reminder of what works for your class is what's right for your class. And so, each one of those scenarios is providing a rich, unique opportunity for students. I'd love to hear a little bit about, sometimes a barrier to doing this work for faculty is like, that's some work. So I would love to hear about what support looks like around, not just that service learning component, but being able to execute and incorporate the Maverick Philanthropy Initiative into your course. Certainly it doesn't mean that there's no work for you, but what does it look like when you think about the support that you've gotten and how that's allowed you to do this and, hopefully continue to do it into the future. And I'll just open it up to both of you to comment if you'd like.
So I would say, I think immediately it was, especially for our class, we just kind of had this conversation like, well, we've never done a class like this before. And so this is kind of, we're not quite sure what it all looks like. And so knowing that, our class is really actually only about 10 weeks. And so we knew we wanted to serve communities of need, but we didn't want to kind of say who needed it. We wanted to really talk to the people out in organizations and find out, okay, what do families, students, schools need? And what do teachers need to know, future teachers need to know? And so one piece of support that we had that was great was just helping identify, we didn't start with just go out and look and try to find out what organizations are out there, but really the MPI group and Grace really helped organize we picked 5 organizations and kind of streamlining some of that background ahead of time so that then our students could take it one step further, knowing that we didn't have a ton of time within the semester, the confines of a semester. And so that really helped streamline the process and make the whole thing possible. And then so, I mean, that was huge, that background piece of it. And then just a lot of the organizational of, you know, getting in contact with folks from different organizations and trying to make sure that we were all on the same page on how students were going to present information, and then how we were going to ultimately let students have time to process and reflect and make the most educated decision that they could about their philanthropic decision.
So for my class was slightly different because we kind of allowed students to choose whatever nonprofits they wanted to. And when I first started working with MPI, with the Service Learning Academy, you know, this wonderful opportunity was brought to my attention of doing this for our Persuasive One presentation, which is already embedded into an assignment that students would do in the general education course anyway. But allowing students to kind of reflect at the beginning about, you know, what things matter to them and how they would like to give back to the community, and then associate that back to here are different community partners that Service Learning Academy already works with. So while there was some maybe initial work when it comes to, you know, writing the assignment itself and thinking through how it was going to grade students and how it was going to connect to the learning objectives in the course, as well as my teaching philosophy, I would say Service Learning gave like 99% of the support for it. Much thanks to, again, Grace has worked with me the entire time I've worked on this project, I think. And so we started out with students have kind of a self-reflection that they do on Canvas. They did that initially on paper, but obviously as things have transitioned, we've been able to kind of create that on Canvas, and Service Learning Academy and Grace kind of connected me to that assignment. Then all of my MPI courses have a service learning module on Canvas, and Service Learning provided all of the material for that module as well. So there's, you know, a video about what MPI is, what service learning is. There's connections and help with how to appropriately interview community partners. And then perhaps the coolest part is that, you know, again, students get to choose their own nonprofit they're going to support throughout the semester. So Grace and Service Learning Academy have worked tirelessly in, you know, creating a long list of community partners that students can support, listing out, you know, who the community partners are, what their missions are, and giving students a contact from the very beginning. So students through my course will essentially choose which nonprofit they're going to work on for their assignments. Again, this semester being Informative 2 and Persuasive 1, but in previous semesters just Persuasive. And we work very closely together, I would say, on, you know, I provide a list of students and make sure that they, that Service Learning Academy knows which nonprofits they want to work with. And Grace and the Service Learning Academy kind of take it from there and connect with the community partners, make sure that they know that there's going to be a student that's probably going to reach out to them wanting an interview. And then also kind of keep the community partners up to date on what deadlines are for the class as well, which really, really helps the students, because then it's easier for them to set those interviews, to think through, you know, how they're going to get their assignments completed on time and things like that. But I would say, you know, as I've mentioned, like it's really transitioned from semester to semester, but it's been pretty flawless with that connection between Service Learning Academy and the community partners. And while again, there has been some initial work in like making sure that the assignment fits what the students are needing, I think that each semester it's grown in a way because of the strong connection with Service Learning Academy and the support that I've been given. So it's been almost no stress, and it's been so worth it. I mean, look at the wonderful students that presented today and shared their opinions and were part of the video. I think that's a testament to the project and the hard work that Service Learning Academy has done for us as faculty and for students.
Thank you. Yeah, I think one of the big takeaways that I want for anybody on today is that we're here to support this process and this journey. And so that's why we exist. And we have a great team. Grace and Mazen are the dream team, and they're there to help, bring these ideas into reality. And so if it's new to you, we will help you make it a reality. I want to just transition over into opening this up for questions. I think there was a question in the chat, but if you have any questions for our panelists, and if our students who are here are open to questions as well, we're really lucky that they're with us here today as well. So any questions that you might have, feel free to unmute and go ahead and ask them.
I can ask I want to make sure we get the question that was in the chat too. So I'm going to read that question for us. But this was for Emily. It said, do you think boomers and the greatest generation are donating less because they're living longer or having to work past traditional retirement age, perhaps? And then also, or is it maybe they're saving it to pass on to the next generation? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I don't know the exact answer, but I have some hypotheses of what that could mean. We also, I think there's also a lot of charitable tools, and there's cash, right? We could be deploying money right now to support, but then there's also, some legacy options. And so a lot of people use a will or, in their request of putting money toward a charitable cause after they pass, or passing on their charitable wealth after they pass as well. So I think there's a lot of people who are very older generations are very mindful, perhaps because they have a little bit more of disposable income to support charitable causes. I can speak, anecdotally. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but from a community foundation perspective, we open up charitable funds. And especially last year with COVID, we opened up quite a few legacy funds. And again, anecdotally, I don't have the ages in front of me. A lot of those folks were, 55, 60 plus, because they're thinking about, those are people who are more disproportionately affected by COVID. They're thinking about their legacy. They're thinking about their kids and how their kids can continue to give. So yeah, I think there's a lot of layers. And I think that the data that I presented earlier could certainly be sliced and diced in a lot of different ways. But I just think I think it is really exciting to see, whatever the percent I mentioned earlier of folks who were identified as 18 to 29 years old who have been giving $25 or more. That's pretty incredible that even if it's $25, there is this understanding of the need to give back to their community. One of the things I've also looked at is giving is taught by either family values, but it's also taught in classes like this. And so it doesn't always come from the home. One of the things that we also really try to impart some of the tools is if fund holders open a fund with us or donors are engaging with us, we say, hey, do you have kids? How can we involve them in the conversation now so that when the time comes, they can also be strategic in their philanthropy? I don't know if I answered your question, but I think there's just a lot of ways to think about the generational trends in giving.
Yes, thanks so much, Emily.
So Laura had another great question for Maya and Amaya, if you guys are open to answering questions. And she was wondering how this project impacted your thoughts for what you'll do after graduation. Do you see yourselves working for a nonprofit or perhaps choosing a for-profit career that has a link to community engagement?
That's actually been a pretty big thought in my head. I'm currently an elementary education major. And so I chose the nonprofit I chose to do my speech over was Kids Can Community Center, knowing that I was going to be working with kids. So making that connection in my speech, I thought that would be nice. But after we had that celebration at the end and we talked about the importance of making connections in the community, that was a really big thought in my head, that I could also work with kids in a different way and also still be incredibly involved in the community. So yeah, that's a pretty big thought in my head, would be working with a nonprofit or, you know, a for-profit in the community. I think that'd be a great opportunity. So currently just kind of going with, you know, the flow of my career right now. But yeah, that was something I thought about a lot.
Yeah, for me, working with City Sprouts has been super cool because there are so many different aspects of like different types of jobs. Like I work with kids, I work with adults, you know, gardening, planting, harvesting, there's like selling of produce, there's making jams and all kinds of stuff. But my thought for after graduation has always been something with the community. I just didn't know what. And after talking with Grace, actually, she introduced me to the idea of social entrepreneurship, which would basically be like a social issue that I could turn into either a for-profit or nonprofit organization. But basically, I kind of want to do something with, sorry, my dog is just so clingy. So I want to do something with like prisons, and I'm going to school for criminal justice and psychology, but either right after I graduate or after I retire, I think I might want to make like a City Sprouts-esque organization, but for felons to work at. So there would be like culinary classes, and I would teach them gardening and stuff like that, that they could take home to their families, because a big issue is the recidivism rates. And the data of that is basically because they're placed back into their old neighborhoods and old situations, they don't want to, you know, work at McDonald's for the rest of their lives, you know, so they're like, what's the point of me staying out of prison, right? So I think if I were to give people a reason to stay out of prison, they might stay out of prison, you know. And I'm hoping that that's my main goal. And whenever that may be, I just hope that I can help the prison population at some point in my life. But yeah, that's what this class has done for me. Thanks.
I love both of your stories. That's amazing.
I was just gonna say thank you too. Yeah. I mean, just, and if I can, just best of luck in your future. We'll love to see what you're both doing next, and keep in touch.
I suspect there's a few people on this call that would like to help you be successful in reaching those goals. So I'm curious too, from a student perspective, if there's any words of encouragement that you would share with the faculty that are on this call. You know, there's obviously a few here that have already incorporated this into their coursework, but I did get an interest form from somebody else on the you know, here today, which excites me. But anything that you would say to faculty, because we've talked a lot about the why for faculty and how they've incorporated it and the support that they've gotten, but why would you want to see more of this happening on campus for yourself and for your peers?
I think we've covered a lot of, you know, why it's important, and I might be repeating myself a little bit here, but it like I said, I didn't know what I was getting into. It was my first like service learning. It was my first semester. So, you know, it was like right away into it. And I said it in the video that I felt so fulfilled after it, and being connected with the community. And this semester I'm actually doing
two service learning classes. One for my ESL class, we're meeting with the LCC, and then one for my human relations class. Dr. Huber's here too. Hi, Dr. Huber. And we are meeting with students on working on a redlining project. So they're my favorite classes. It's my favorite part of the class is just being able to be involved. And with kids, I mean, I love kids, obviously. So I think it takes the class to a complete different level, and just feeling like there's a purpose, and feeling fulfilled, involved with the community and everything. So.
Yeah, now my dog's playing with his toy, so I'm so sorry. But Zeus, really? So for me, it's not that I don't have people who believe in me, but just having like a professional that wants to see me do well and believes in my ideas was really like, it made me feel like I might know a little bit of what I'm doing, you know, like I might know how to take this into the real world when I graduate. Because I don't have much, like I live in a single parent household, and it's not that my dad is not good at like supporting me, but it's just nice to hear from other people that I know what I'm gonna do and that I am capable of doing that. So that's why this class was really great for me, was because I didn't know if anybody really cared, you know, what I had to talk about. And so just that reassurance that like that is needed and that's something that's important was just really good to hear. I'm so sorry.
We appreciate Zeus's opinion as well. So. And I appreciate both of you, you know, engaging in this part. I know we didn't really ask for you to do that earlier, but I'm so thrilled that you're here and able to share your thoughts and provide your input as well, because at the end of the day, this is about you. It is about students and student learning, and providing you with more tools and resources for, you know, what's next, that next best thing for you. So thank you for engaging in this aspect of the conversation as well. I just wanted to see if there were any other questions for any of our panelists, or even for the team around the initiative, or any, first I'll see if there are any questions. I'd love to give our panelists an opportunity for any closing thoughts as we wrap things up.
Thank you for the opportunity, because I wanted to share. So our class chose food processing advocacy as the kind of organization that received the $1,000. And I have to tell you, it was one of the most powerful experiences I've ever had as a teacher. And I think the biggest reason is because you know, my students kind of voted on what they wanted to, which organization they wanted to work with. And I didn't know their reasoning behind it at the time. And one of the students, you know, as I was going around, as they were planning what they were going to be sharing about their organizations, one of my students shared that her mom worked in a meatpacking plant and was fired after finding out that she had COVID, and that, and just the atrocities that happened to her family. And I didn't know it was that, I didn't know that it was personal like that for her. And in her grace and in her bravery, she shared that testimony to the rest of the class. And what that also brought out was other students who shared their parents who had a similar story in our very own class. And so I think it really just modeled to me as faculty, but also to our peers, that we often don't know the experiences of others. And as future teachers, how powerful it is for them to understand the empathy and the curious before critical at all times, and not knowing what our students go through and what families go through, but that also it really is a we, not them moment of that. everything became personal at that moment when we realized that our class member, our family member in there felt this pain. And then I just was overwhelmed when our class voted then for that, because it was kind of this moment where like, I hear you, and how can we support you? How can we support this community? So it just was overwhelmingly powerful. And I just had to share because I feel like it was an opportunity for our own students to be heard.
Yeah, this has been an amazing opportunity. I want to just take a second again and recognize Amaya and Maya for your contributions to my public speaking class and to the MPI project. You both have done so much. You are wonderful students, and I think it also shows, I'm glad I have the opportunity to do this with so many different classes. Amaya is part of the Teaching Scholar Academy, and Maya is an honors student on campus. And I do this with my other public speaking classes as well. And so it brings so many different ideas and perspectives to the table, which allows students to engage in the community in all different branches and areas that interest them. And to hear that, you know, Grace is having additional conversations with my students about you know, professional opportunities moving forward, and hearing them think about how they want to continue their involvement in the community. I mean, that's why we do the MPI project. It's been absolutely amazing. As a side note to that too, I feel so overwhelmed with emotion from, you know, just doing this panel today, just hearing about, you know, where things have come and where we've been. And one of the experiences I've actually had too is the first semester I did this, I had students from the Teacher Scholars Academy give a presentation over a nonprofit I had never heard about. And it was a nonprofit that supports families with children that have cancer. And I had recently had a very close friend of mine have her daughter have cancer. And I was able to connect them to the nonprofit from my students' presentation. So absolutely amazing. Like, it's amazing being able to donate to a nonprofit, but it's even better when we learn ourselves as faculty, when we learn about the communities around us, because it's not just that one nonprofit at the end of the semester that gets the support from the class, it's all of them. And I have, you know, 25 to 30 students in each class that get to choose a different nonprofit. So doing this every semester has just been amazing. So thank you so much, Service Learning Academy, for providing this opportunity to me and my students.
Well, gosh, that was very overwhelming and powerful. And thank you both, you know, faculty members, but also students, for sharing. And again, thank you for inviting me to learn about what you all are doing, because I think it's incredibly important to have strong partnerships. And that's what I think that's what's so amazing about UNO and the Service Learning Academy and this initiative specifically is, you know, change happens at the speed of trust, change happens at the speed of relationships. And so if we are collectively working together to create positive, impactful change for our community, closing those gaps of community need, breaking down barriers of systemic racism, and truly and looking at what we're doing with an eye to racial equity and justice. And I just think that together we can do anything. And I think one last kind of maybe lesson learned or another thing students can think about, or even all of us can think about, is in this work, we are walking alongside community. It's with, not for. And I think that's really important as we engage, or our students engage with philanthropic endeavors, nonprofit conversations and relationships, because I think we've all experienced something in our lives that we have either utilized a nonprofit for or have needed support with. And I just think empathy, as Dr. Gomez Johnson said, I think that empathy is just incredibly important. And again, thank you for letting Omaha Community Foundation be part of this conversation. I really appreciate being here.
I wish I could bottle up the support and love and just everything about this session into a bottle, and we could just kind of spray it around or like take a shot of it. Yeah, take a little sip now and then. It's just really beautiful, and it really speaks to the why. Why are we doing this? And I can't really articulate it any better than all of you have. And so I have a short, long list of people that I want to thank as we are wrapping up, and just a few things that I want to share as kind of next steps. And so first, I want to thank our panelists and our students. You tell the story the best because you're on the front line of this work. And I just appreciate everything that you each have done, your commitment to this type of work and just putting your heart into it. I also want to thank Mazen and Grace. You two are really, truly the dream team for Maverick Philanthropy Initiative. And I'm really excited to see us continue to grow this across campus. And so I know that with you, on the team, we will continue to do that. Also to Madeline and Claire, who have put together the showcase this week, which has consisted of a number of sessions. Just great job on pulling this all together in this virtual setting so that we could really highlight the great work that's been going on, despite any barriers that we might be facing at this time, and coming together and to being able to share this out. As far as next steps with the Maverick Philanthropy Initiative, we have shared, and I will email out all of the resources that have been made available, but we did share an interest form. So for faculty or community partners that maybe aren't engaged right now, but want to become engaged. And then also I'll be holding 2 office hours next week, 2 office hour sessions. And so that's in the chat, and I will also email that out. So if you just want to pop in and talk some more about ideas that you have, please feel free to. Also, we can just set up meetings for another time as well, if that works best. So thank you everybody for your time and attention to this really important topic and just being a part of this conversation. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I look forward to continuing this good work with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Live applause.
Thanks for inviting me. I had a lot of fun.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I can't wait to talk about what's next in partnering around this. So
perfect. Have a great day.
Thank you. That was